Hello and welcome to this tutorial on creating and managing user identities in Office 365. Before we continue, it's important to mention that you should have your own tenant set up. If you're following along with your corporate tenant, I would not recommend making too many changes, as this may impact on security and also licensing. If you do have a test tenant set up, I would recommend rather using your test tenant. If you do not have a corporate environment to follow through or a test tenant, I would recommend viewing my video on how to create a Office 365 subscription, which is a free subscription through Microsoft. So in this tutorial, we'll be going over the process of creating a user identity, and we'll be looking at that in both Microsoft 365 Admin Center, which you can see in front of me, as well as Azure Active Directory. So first we'll be doing this in the Admin Center, which you can access by going with your admin account to admin.microsoft.com and heading over to Users and Active Users. So you can see over here, I've only have one user listed in my tenant, which is the admin account, which I used when I set up the tenant in the beginning. With the Microsoft developer subscription, you get the E5 license, which allows you to have 25 users. So for testing purposes, this is more than sufficient. So you can see over here, I've only got my admin account. I'm going to create another user by clicking on the Add User button. And I'm going to give the user a name of test1. I'm not really creative in my naming. You can maybe add different usernames. You can see over here the display name is mandatory, but if I click on the field, it automatically adds it based on the name that I added at the top here. Username is not auto-populated based on your first name and last name, so we will just add a name over here of test1, which obviously corresponds to the name and the surname that I added. So the user account for this, or the email address for this user that I'm creating, will be test1@webesolutions.onmicrosoft.com. I'm going to leave the password to auto-generate and require the user to change password when they first sign in. Let's click on next. And one thing to mention, which is quite important, is the signing of the product licenses. In the Azure Portal, this is a field that you can add, but it's not mandatory as it is in the Admin Center. So I'm based in Germany, and I will set my location to Germany. If you do not set this in Azure when you create a user in the Azure Portal, you will not be able to assign a license. So this is really mandatory, and you cannot assign any licenses without setting a location. So if we scroll down, you can see we've got two options over here. One, we can assign a user a product license, and the other one, we can create a user without a product license. As I mentioned, we have 25 license allocated to this user, so to this account. So if you assign it, it's not going to be a problem. You can also see over here, I've enabled in Azure the enterprise mobility and security option. And for that, we have 250 licenses, where with the Microsoft 365 E5 developer, I have 4 of 25. So I'll just select the E5 developer subscription license. And over here, you can also, if you really wanted to, it's not recommended by Microsoft, but you can create a user without a product license. Let's click on next. And over here, you can see you can add a role to the user. Currently, we're not going to add any roles. We'll be going through that in another video. So let's just click on next, and we can finish it. So over here, you can see review all of the information that we added. The username is test1, email address test1@webesolutions.onmicrosoft.com, and password was auto-generated, and here's the licensing information. No user roles have been assigned, and let's finish. So where you can see the display name for the user, the username, which is the email address, and the password. I'll be deleting this user or changing the password, so it doesn't matter if you see it on the screen now. And license is bought. That doesn't have any information. You can review all of the information, and let's click on close. So now if we go under active users, you can see over here we have one user that's been added, and that's the test one at webesolutions.microsoft.com. So as I mentioned, there were two ways. This was the first way through the admin center, and the second option is to create a user in portal.azure.com. Microsoft often changes the look and feel of this. So if you wanting to access Active Directory, you could always type it over here, Active, and it will list all of the options that correspond to that. And here you can see Active Directory. Active Directory is listed over here, so you can see one of the panels. And I think over here I haven't used it before, so you cannot see it over here. But always use the search if you're looking for a feature that you can't find. So let's click on View under Active Directory, and this will take us to Azure Active Directory. On the left-hand side over here, you can see a number of options. We'll be going through all of these options at a later stage, but for now, we're just going to click on User. And note that both Azure Active Directory is displaying the users that we had in the previous panel over here because they are connected. And to create a new user, all we do is click on the New User button at the top. And you have an option to create a user or invite a user. So over here, by the user identity, the username of test2. Remember, previous user that we created was test1, so I'll name this test2, and the given name or the name for this user will be test space 2, and the username is test, and the last name is 2. Okay, so over here again you can see the password is auto-generated, or you can create your own password. No groups have been added. The role is a user, and over here under settings you can block the user sign in. So this would mean that the user cannot sign in. I'm gonna set that to no. And again, the user location is a mandatory field in the admin center, but in Azure it's not. So over here you have to add a user, otherwise you cannot assign it a license. So this is very important to note. So I've set my location to Germany. Don't worry about the job title and department. You can always come into here later and edit it. And if we say create, you can see over here test2 has been created. If I open up the user account, I can see all of the information provided to this user. Currently it doesn't have a license. If we click under licenses, you can see there's no license assignment. We can assign a license to it, but we will be doing that in a later video. So in this video, we basically went through the creation of a user account in both Azure Active Directory and in the admin portal. If you have any questions or would you like to add any comments, I would be happy to hear your feedback.